Hi,
Hi,
how are you today?
I'm having a good day today.
Are you?
Yes.
Tell me.
Well, today I went out. I don't go out every day. Um, as you know, I had a very large surgery on the
Mhm.
26th of June that saved my life, and I've been recovering from it. And strangely, throughout the entire process of being diagnosed with cancer, having 4 months of intense chemotherapy, and just the whole situation in general, I was always in a really good mood and I didn't like react emotionally to it. And I went into the surgery being like, let's go, let's get the show on the road, people. Like, I wore like an outfit to the surgery. I was like wearing like white linen, an Hermes scarf, a visor. I was like, what am I wearing to the surgery? That's where my like attention was focused. And now that I'm home and I'm recovering, thank God, because 10% of people die from the surgery that I had, which is not, I mean, in North America, they would have been like 90% of people survive. But in France, they're like 10% of people die from this surgery. So that was quite scary for me. But I had a really positive outlook because I just knew that there was no way that my mother, my guardian angel, was letting me die. So I went in there being like, everything's going to be okay. And there were so many signs along the way. So I met my surgeon 3 days before the surgery. They have to validate the surgery. If so, 3 days before your surgery, you have to get a brain scan. You have to make sure that it hasn't metastasized. If it's metastasized, your surgery is canceled. They're like, sorry, we can't help you. This is your timeline. Yes. And I had a stage 3 cancer. So I was very close to that point. And 50% of people, apparently the type of cancer, and I don't want to reveal yet the type of cancer that I had. 50% of people with the type of cancer that I had, it metastasizes to the brain. It loves to go to the brain. So waiting for that PET scan to come back, and my mother just died of brain cancer 2 years ago, was just like, I shopped a lot in those days waiting for the results. I spent a lot of money. And so anyway, I was very lucky. I met the surgeon after all those tests were clean, green light, we're doing your surgery. So he had an accent. And I'm like, are you Italian? Like, where are you from? You know me, I like to schmooze. It's like a surgeon. This is like a serious. And I'm just like, you have an accent. Like, where are you from? Are you Italian? I'm like, sono italiana, parlo italiana. But, because my grandmother is Italian. And he was like, no, I am Romanian. And I'm like, oh, my great grandmother's Romanian. No way. And my great grandmother was a doctor. And I have her university medical certificate signed and framed in my home. And I had a picture of it in my phone and I showed him, and he's like, the guy is literally jaw drops to the floor. The person who signed the medical diploma in 1934 became the director. His son became the director of the university where my surgeon got his degree and is now his best friend.
So you have to say that one more time. Walk me through that one more time.
I showed him the artwork. I've made it into artwork of my great grandmother's medical diploma, and he saw the signature, and he was like, from a little speck of a village called Yash, which they were Moldovan at the time, but now it's part of Romania. But it's the same village, and so it's from the University of Moldova. But the signature on the certificate is his best friend's father, who signed my grandmother's certificate.
What? That's crazy.
But when I saw that, I was like, first of all, don't fuck this up. We're cousins. I was like, you better not fuck this one up.
Oh
And
my
second
God.
of all, I just knew that it was a sign from my grandmother,
Mhm.
my ancestors, that, I mean, what are the odds of that? I knew that everything was going to go great. I went into the surgery. I wasn't afraid. They were like, I just went in there on like autopilot. So I dealt with it like really, really positively. I also hid my cancer from everybody. I wore a wig. I continued working full time through chemotherapy, voice acting, copywriting, because I'm a very empathetic person. And when I see somebody in the street that clearly has cancer, that is bald, my eyes fill with tears and I feel so bad for that person. And I did not want to be that person. So I mean, that was like my biggest anxiety, was that, are they going to know I'm wearing a wig? First of all, a good wig costs like 2,000 euro. And I had 3 of them on rotation, because you can't just wear the same one every day. You have to wash it. You have to let it dry naturally. This was like my anxiety, was like, are they going to know? Are they going to know? I had to go into studios to do voiceovers. I'm wearing a wig. And like, the last thing that you want, as a former actress, when you're performing, is to not be present and be thinking about your hair. Do people know I'm wearing a wig? And so I needed to have the best wig and the best this. Anyway, so I got all that under control. I went to like Place Vendôme and got the fanciest and the this and the that. And I made it a point to keep it a secret. I had a WhatsApp group where I had support from, it's funny, I say my closest friends, but there were 100 people in that group. And those are all my best friends. And how lucky I am to be able to say that I literally have 100 best friends all over the world. And that was my support system. And I'm proud of myself for doing that, because I wanted to keep it a secret from everybody. And I was like, no, I need support. So I was able to, ask my friends to keep it in confidence. I trusted them. And the encouragement, every single thing that I would do, guys, I'm on my way to chemo. I would be like singing in the parking lot of the chemo. And I tried to make everything like, guys, this is my outfit for my second chemo. I would be like slow dancing with the machines. And, I made a spectacle out of it. It was the only way I could get through it. But so when I say that today's a good day, since I've been home and all of this is behind me, I've been very down. And I guess it's like all the emotion. Maybe you can enlighten me of what's happening to me, because I wake up crying in the morning and I go to sleep crying, and I cry a lot. And I do have great days where I'm like so happy and I'm celebrating, and I'm working on so many incredible projects. Since I posted this reel, I think you saw the reel that I posted, that got organically almost, I think it has 150,000 views on it now. And the amount of people that found, it says on Instagram, followed you via your reel. And all these people started reaching out to me. And it's just crazy what's happened. The podcasts that I've been invited on, the TV shows I've been invited on. I was approached to write a book, and I'm working with a company called Book Doulas out of Los Angeles, and I will be writing a book, and we're already working on it. Yes. And that's something, that's something I've always wanted to do. And I needed the guidance, because the book industry is like, it's like being an actor and being like, what do I do? Like, what's a casting? It's not at all what you think it is. I would think that I would have to write the entire book first. But now I have this team called the Book Doulas that are, first of all, when I told them my story, it was supposed to be at 15 minutes. You have 15 minutes to pitch your story, and we're going to work with you or not. And 15 minutes turned into 2.5-hour phone conversation. And we were already titling the book, dividing it into sections. They were like, and I'm relaying their words, quote unquote. They're like, the world needs to hear your story. Mm-hmm. And I'm just so excited. And so that will be finished by September. So you don't even have to write the book. You have to, so step one is do a synopsis, choose the genre, which we've already done, divide it into 3 parts. We've already done that. On our preliminary interview that was supposed to be 15 minutes, we did half the project already. It was amazing. Mm-hmm. One of them is the wife, and I think she helped a lot with the writing of the book, called Don't Sweat the Small Stuff, if you've heard of that book, which was, it's a very, very famous New York Times bestselling book. And it was my mother's favorite book. So I was like, this is a sign. My mother always used to say to me, don't sweat the small stuff. Mm-hmm. And the fact that I'm working with this team, it's just crazy. And somebody else that I hold very close to my heart, her name is Diane B. Gray. She's the president of the Kubler-Ross Foundation, which is the book on grief and grieving. It's like the reference book that every psychologist gives you when you lose somebody in your life. She worked very closely with them, and I believe she's now the president or ambassador. I don't want to misinform, but she's at a very high level. And she gave me a grief session when I lost my mother. And when I told her who I had found to work with, she was like, Erica, I know these people. She was like, buckle up. This is legit, Erica. Get ready for a ride. And, this is this is my dream come true. And work lights me up. But on the weekends, people aren't working. And it's summer in Paris. No one's working. So I have a little too much spare time. And I'm find myself just crying. Mm-hmm. And I don't know why. And I also think that it has to do with the fact that I went through this whole experience, and I think my mother would be so happy to know the outcome of this situation. And it makes me so sad. And then there's the argument, of course, that she does know because she's omnipresent. And what's very interesting, actually, is that that my mother's funeral was on my birthday. 2 years to the day of my mother's funeral, the surgeon came into my room in the hospital and said to me, on July 7th, on my birthday, you're cancer-free. You can go. Bye. Go home. So I took that as a sign from my mother being like, you see, close the circle. Mm-hmm. And it's time for you to carry your grief differently. Mm-hmm. Because even a doctor in the hospital, they were all shocked that a healthy 37-year-old girl had a cancer that 70-year-olds get. And I did test positive for this cancer gene. And I love to say that my mother gave me her high cheekbones, her green eyes, and her cancer gene. Thanks, Mom. So they did say that I would have gotten cancer later in my life because I have the gene, but the trauma and the shock of the intense experience that I lived with my mother, who went from being this vibrant, beautiful woman, who was famous on my Instagram for throwing up the finger and just being crazy and wild in Paris with me, getting a tattoo with me. Anyway, we had our wild times, and I live in those memories and I cherish them. But she went from having a glioblastoma is the most brutal cancer diagnosis that you can get. And my mother went from being this vibrant, active, beautiful woman to being an unrecognizable dying animal on the road. We had to remove all the mirrors from her room. She was unable to speak overnight. She couldn't. It was horror. And again, through that whole time, I stayed with her. I stayed in Canada with her for 9 months while breastfeeding my 4-month-old baby in a palliative care center. I stayed with her because I didn't want to have any regrets. This is the hardest thing that's ever happened, but I was like, if I don't stay with her, I'm going to, on top of the sadness, regret that I wasn't there for my mother. So I abandoned my entire life and I stayed there with her, and I did my Celine Dion impressions and I tried to make her laugh, and I did make her laugh. I made her laugh a lot. And I was the only one who could. And I would bring her cutlery from her house. And I was manic. I was crazy. That's my defense mechanism. I had to make everything perfect for her. Sorry, she doesn't eat hospital food. I've brought from this restaurant, and she has this Villeroy and Bosch table setting, and she'll be eating on her Christophe plates and cutlery. And that's how it was for every single meal. And that for me was my defense mechanism. And I wanted my mother, she had no dignity. She would just sit there and cry her eyes out. And I wanted her to have some sort of that, whatever she could have. So, and again, I didn't react until she died because I was her cheerleader. I would go in there and be like, Mommy, looking good, Mommy. I the Celine Dion impressions though, and I filmed them. They're so funny. Anyway, I just clowned myself out for those 8 months and made myself her number one cheerleader. And then when she died, I truly fell apart. I couldn't stop the tears from coming out of my eyes, kind of similar to what's happening to me now. It's like I live the experience and I'm positive. And then when it's over, it's just like, ugh. And the Diane B. Gray did help me a lot. 6 months after my mother died, she responded to my Instagram message because she's a very difficult woman to get in touch with. She's very well known. And 6 months later, I was sitting in a cafe, in a Starbucks, in a parking lot in Canada. I happened to be there drinking my Frappuccino. And she's like, I'm so sorry. I just saw your message now, but there's something about you. And I'm free right now. Are you free? And I'm like, well, I'm in my car drinking a Frappuccino in a parking lot. I guess I'm free. So we had this session and it was very healing for me. And we've since kept in touch, and she's coming to Paris and we're going to meet for the first time. And what's crazy is that her family lives 15 minutes away from where I live because, I moved out of Paris. And so we're going to meet. So that's very exciting for me. And so then she told me she was coming to Paris, and I was like, I have cancer. And she called me and she was like, what? And just we stayed on the phone for an hour, and she was like, listen, Erica, I have to tell you. And again, I'm just relaying what people tell me. I don't think that I get a lot of messages on Instagram, and I find it really annoying. Thank you to everyone who's seeing this, who sends me those messages, but you're such a hero. You're such an inspiration. And it's like, I'm not a hero. I got cancer and I did what I had to do. I didn't go to the middle of a war-torn country and risk my life to save children. That's what a hero is. And it really bothers me when people call me a hero. All I did was, I have a very good friend named Amanda Skolnick, Spiro, who got cancer when she was 21 years old. And we have kept in touch. When my mother was sick, she would come into my mother's room and pray. She turned religious, Jewish religious, through losing, Jacqueline Linetsky. She was Jacqueline Linetsky's best friend. It was Amanda and Jackie. So she lost her best friend, and then she got some sort of lymphoma. She was diagnosed with cancer at 21, just a couple of years. So her life was not easy. And she found a higher power. We can call it God, we can call it the universe, call it whatever you want. She found her path. She's now a motivational speaker. She's so aligned on her path. She's such a wonderful person. And she was there for me during this experience with my mother. And then when I thought that I had cancer, I was waiting for the results. She told me, Erica, I'm telling you right now, you have two choices. You can feel bad for yourself and say, why me? Or you can say, God or the universe doesn't give you more than you can handle. And you can believe that. And you can know that you were built to handle this. And you will handle it. And that just like kept playing in my head. And I just knew, believing in this higher power, for me, it's my mother and my grandmother and my ancestors that I know are still with me. That's what kept me positive and smiling throughout the entire experience. And there are books written on the impact of having a positive attitude and the outcome of your illness. And I just knew that I was going to be fine the entire time.
When people are commenting to you about being a hero, I don't think it's just that you lived something difficult. And because, of course, you had to endure that. I think you use the words like handle it. I had to handle it. So you just handle it. But I think what people are probably referring to as heroism is that I think that you've been doing more than just handling it. You've been really alchemizing the experience and how you're showing up with it.
Did you just say alchemizing?
Yeah.
That's so funny because I just ordered The Alchemist. I felt like I should read it right now. I just got it today in the mail.
There you go.
It's so funny. Anyway, what a gorgeous word. I love it.
Yeah, because it's what I like about alchemizing is it's a transformative process that's taking some of the original material, the grief, the stress, the having compartmentalized things, the trauma of what you went through with your mother, and it's not denying it, it's not shunning it away, it's not closing it up in a closet or a box. It's transforming it and making use of that material to birth something beautiful that still contains a little bit of that sadness and that pain, but also, as Amanda was saying, it's what you can handle and then what you make use of as this like raw material, and how you're going to show up in the world and how you're going to be of service and how you're going to inspire others, like she's doing with the motivational. I'm sure that the studies exist in terms of positive thinking being supportive of healing. But I also think that positive thinking should not mean a denial of the challenging feelings that are present as well, because I think that a lot of illness is born out of the way that we compartmentalize stress and sadness and grief and disappointment. And so alchemy implies that, like, yes, we're building to something stronger, we're up leveling, we're making use of, we're seeing this as part of our path and our purpose and our calling, but we're also accepting and making space for all the different colors and shades of our experience without shunning them away or trying to hide them.
Yeah, I'm really bad at that. Like I'm really bad at, I'm always like the positive cheerleader, and I'm really, good at like the silver linings. And for me, what lights me up is like writing this book, inspiring people. Somebody is doing a project where they photograph scars and they tell the stories behind the scars, and they asked me if I would participate. And I've got some serious scars. I had some serious surgery. And I said, absolutely, yes, I would love to. And I'm an open book, but I'm a closed book in the fact that, like, I don't know why I keep crying. Tears streaming down my face, going to bed at 7 p.m., waking up at 4 p.m. And it's not every day. I've only been home from the hospital for what, 10 days? So,
and you were in intensive care.
I was in the ICU for 6 days, and then I was in um, the regular surgery room recovery for another week. So yeah, no, it was a very there were bones moved, there was an essential organ removed, and I will reveal all of this later when I feel more comfortable to. But for now I'm not at that point yet, you know?
Just to go back to the grief, I think that a lot of people that are attached to always being in the positive mindset, that kind of role, there's an underlying assumption that the negative emotions are going to necessarily be extremely uncomfortable and unpleasant.
Yeah.
And obviously, the things that you've been through are very uncomfortable and unpleasant. I'm not going to try to minimize that. But I think that actually, like if you see a kid or an animal, like they'll be crying 1 second and then within 30 seconds, or not much less actually, like within 5 seconds, they're onto something else. They're laughing. They're not at all concerned about whatever they were upset about just moments before because they're not attached to holding on to any one state. So they all kind of move through them organically. And so my opinion about grief is I think a lot of people feel like, oh, in order to grieve, I have to stop my life completely. I have to just like wait till my grieving's done and then start living again. And I'm not ready to just turn off my whole life. And I don't want to live in a complete state of depression. And my experience is that the sooner that you surrender to almost embracing the feeling, whether it's the sadness or the grief or that discomfort, it actually melts and drops away a lot quicker. And it can actually pass through you faster. It might come in waves, but it won't linger with the same force as when we're trying to resist it, because then it kind of fights back. It's like the more we repress it, the more it will take over like a kind of a tidal wave. Whereas if we just have it in little doses, then it sort of moves through us with greater fluidity.
You're absolutely right. And I think that the grief that I have for myself from my experience, it's not real. I don't really have like I kind of mourn old Erica. I did that, and that took me like a minute because I think I look pretty cool bald. But I did have to mourn like old Erica with like the beautiful long black hair, and I had a look, and that's no longer me. I'm a transformed person. I'm not the same person. But Mama Oracle, who I believe you know as well, who is an amazing force of super nature, I can't even say of nature, told me, Erica, this happened to you because this is an alarm that your body, like from your body, that you need to move forward in the grief of your mother. Until I was diagnosed with cancer, it was 1.5 years since my mother had died. I was crying in my bed every single night, screaming, Mommy, Mommy. I was crying in my shower. Every single time I took a shower, I was crying hysterically. I was not advancing in my grief at all. I was talking to my kids about grandma. I was crying in front of my children. It was not good. Like it was getting, the more time that I spent not with my mother, the worse it was getting. And since I've been diagnosed with cancer, and I completely believe Mama Oracle because she is always right. This was and a Hindu doctor at the hospital asked me, have you lived a trauma recently? Because there's no other explanation for this genetic mutation that you had unless you lived a trauma. Off the record, I'm an oncologist, but it doesn't make any sense medically that you have stage 3 cancer. You have I have a very healthy lifestyle, and this is a cancer that like 70-year-olds get. So he was like, this doesn't make any sense unless you've lived a trauma. And it was because my grief was just getting worse and worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. So you're absolutely right in that you have to surrender to it. And I had to just let myself cry. And since I've been diagnosed with cancer, it kind of gave me a perspective because my mother from the beginning was told, you have a timeline. And from the beginning, I was told, you have hope. So it gave me a perspective of like, I'm so lucky and I'm so grateful. The only one negative thought that I ever had was, I don't know if you were at my mother's funeral. It's all a blur to me of who came to my mother's funeral, but I think you were there.
I was there, yeah.
I remember what you were wearing now, actually. My photographic memory. And thank you for coming. And but all of the grandchildren were it was so sad. All of the 8 grandchildren were walking around her grave as they lowered her coffin into the ground. And my brother was playing guitar, and it was just like so emotional. And I couldn't get this image out of my mind of my 2 beautiful sons walking around the coffin as they lowered my coffin into the ground. And I couldn't get that thought out of my head. And so I spoke about it to Mama Oracle, and she told me, draw it, write it down, do whatever you need to do, get it out, burn it.
Mm-hmm.
I never thought about it ever again. Never. And then I just switched on to like, I refuse to die. I'm going to be fine. And I just surrendered to like the higher power. And I put all my faith in it. And yeah. And now it's like the recovery part is really weird. It's really, really
Well,
weird.
because you had to be strong. You had to get into that survivor mentality when she was sick, when you're going through your treatment. It's like when you have to, like those people that get stuck on Everest or something, and they have to like ice pick on a mountain for 3 days with a broken leg or something like that, drinking snow. Like you can't process the emotions when you're in that kind of emergency mode. And so your body did, and also not just your body, but your soul and your heart and your mind did what it had to do to get yourself through that. But now that you've done those actions on the outer plane and you've reached this threshold where you're clear, and that's incredible. Now there's space for those things, the emotions to come up that it wasn't really safe to process while you had to stay positive and really constructive and proactive. And I know it's challenging to kind of to fit that in and weave that in with your everyday life. But I think that this is probably a longer trend. Like I imagine that even some of the grief with your mother, even though that is enough grief for anybody, I bet there was also things that you had been holding throughout your life that came through with that grief. Like once those doors were open to allow yourself to feel, there was probably other things in your life that you hadn't allowed yourself to feel fully that had an occasion to present through that opening.
That is true. I think that is true. Yes. I mean, I learned a lot. Like, I always wasn't the best at picking my boyfriends or men. I have an attraction to narcissistic, pervert narcissists. You know me, my string of completely narcissistic boyfriends. Anyway, narcissistic boyfriends. And listen, I will preface this by saying that since I've been sick, my ex-husband has been an angel. He shows up, he has a key to my house every single morning with an oat milk latte, gluten-free banana bread, takes the kids to school. He has been an angel. And I don't recognize him. And it's like confusing me, but that's another topic. But I left him because I realized when my mother passed away that I didn't want to pass away not being madly in love with my partner and having regrets. And my mother had no disrespect to my father. No disrespect at all. My father's a very interesting man, but I don't think they had the most romantic relationship. And I don't think my mother was the happiest of wives. And I saw that, and I was raised in a household like that. And the second my mother died, I left Laurent.
Mm-hmm.
And so it did bring up a lot of things that I had suppressed. And
that she had suppressed too, right? Like you're also grieving for her, which she didn't have a chance to experience.
Yeah, and I wanted to honor her, and I wanted to be like, Mom, she always told me, Erica, you and I are a lot alike. There's just one thing different. We have one difference, and it's that you have huge fucking balls. Pardon my French. And she was like, get up. You say, I'm moving to Paris. You pack your bags. You leave. You say, I'm moving to Italy to study Italian. You pack your bags. You leave. She's like, I could have never done that. And she's like, I think you're completely crazy. I don't understand what marketing is. I don't understand what it is that you do for a living, but I admire you. And I wish that, and we're just, it's a generational thing. She didn't have the education. She didn't have the choice. She had a cookie cutter life of being a housewife. And we came from, and that's what made us best friends, is that we used to be enemies because I used to be like, we had so many differences. And then when I saw her as a person and no longer as my mother, I gained this huge respect for her because she had a really hard life. She didn't have a choice of what she got to do. I have every single choice in the world. I do whatever the F I want when I want to do it. And I don't need a man to tell me that I can, So I do a lot of things to honor my mother. I work really hard. I made myself a beautiful home. I don't have any interest really in men at the moment because who needs them, really? It's just like having another child. I already have 2 babies. I don't need another one.
Maybe we can work on that mindset a touch, but but I think that some of this, it's interesting that your ancestors are your guides, because I think that some of the grief that you're also processing is probably theirs as well, right? It's like that intergenerational grief. And it's interesting that we started this call and you're talking about your great grandmother who did have this incredible medical achievement, and then you contrast that with your mother who didn't have these opportunities to excel and thrive in the same way as you do.
She was a Jewish female doctor during the Second World War, and she had an office in Milan, and she had a house on Lake Como that she owned, and she was a badass bee. And I wear her jewelry, and I'm not wearing any of it right now, but I wear her jewelry often. And I brought her photo to my surgery, and my other grandmother's photo, and for other reasons, because she was just so optimistic, and my mother's photo. But my grandmother intellectually is my icon. Like, I framed her diplomas. I spent thousands of euro restoring the label on the shipping tube that they sent from her university in Milan to the refugee camp that she was living in during when she escaped Italy during the Holocaust. Because they come from a line of doctors. I spent thousands of euro having these things restored and made into art. And there's a reason I did that. I worship my grandmother. I worship her. She was my, she's my female role model. My mother was my style icon. My mother taught me how to be a wonderful mother. My mother taught me how to cook. She taught me many, many things. She taught me how to be generous, how to love, how to open your heart to strangers, how to respect everybody. She instilled the most beautiful values in me. But my work ethic comes from my grandmother, and I recognize that. There's a reason that I have her diplomas hanging all over my bedroom. So I do recognize that. And that's interesting that you as well picked up on that. Ancestors are very important, and our family stories are very important. And I feel like they're all here with me, and I hope that they're all proud of me.
I have no doubt that they are. I think that I also feel motivated by my maternal ancestors, my grandmothers, my mother's line, my father's line as well, in terms of my own goals. But I think that we also have to be careful about internalizing some of that as a pressure that we put on ourselves to right the wrongs of the past. And we both have these strong drives to achieve. I mean, it's kind of a superpower in your case, and I really mean that like a magical
power, but okay.
But I also think that, as we've seen with these experiences, that in life the truth is always in the middle, right? There's nuance, right? We always have to find that. We'll never find truth on the extreme ends of things. So that strong drive that you have, and that ability to make things manifest and to achieve and to pull these incredible rabbits out of hats, and just like in an incredible time, and that support you're getting from the astral plane through your ancestors and through these synchronicities, it's incredible. But as you've seen, there's always going to be something in life that if you don't pump the brakes a little bit and slow down yourself, there'll be something that will come and slow you down. And so that could be a tidal wave of grief that's ambushing you in the shower, or that can be a conscious decision to slow down in gentler ways, to relieve yourself of some of that pressure, to allow yourself pleasure and softness and leisure, so that it actually doesn't have to overtake you as grief that just stops you in your tracks, but can just be a general softening of these expectations on yourself on a kind of a daily basis.
Yeah, you're right. You're always right.
It's easy to tell other people.
But you're always right. You're definitely on the right path. I think I've known you now for 22 years.
Oh.
I think we met when we were 15. We met when we were 15. Yes. You were my friend's girlfriend in like elementary school or high school, early high school.
Yeah.
And I've always kept in touch, and I'm very grateful for that. And I really admire you, and things that you're saying to me that you think I have all these superpowers. It's kind of like, that's how I feel about you. You're like, I'm just going to put it out there. You've listened to your inner drive, and you've moved to Costa Rica and created this entire empire by yourself. And it's just, I think that it's crazy. Like, it's not like moving to Paris. It's like you're just doing what you're completely out of the box, like completely just following your inner drive. And I know that you struggled for a little bit with like finding like everybody does, finding the recipe that's going to work, but you found it. You have all these things going on, and like, if there's anyone I have a girl crush on, it's you.
Thank you. The feeling is mutual. I'm honored to wear that title.
And I think it's a bit funny, but it has to be said.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in the Costa Rican jungle. You can't really see super well with my blurry background, but I just had a thunderstorm here, and I'm still refining the pieces of, bringing it all together, as you've said. But I do think that if there's anything I hope to transmit, is listening to your inner voice, and I think we all access it. And I do think that sometimes, like as we're saying, it takes a little bit of slowing down, a little bit of quiet to hear their inner voice. And sometimes we're so afraid of making that space because we think like, oh my God, what's it going to be like when I'm alone, or when there's stillness, or when I stop rushing, or I stop doing, or I stop achieving. But we want to have enough space that we can hear the inner voice. And I think that's the beautiful thing about these really challenging experiences in life that knock us on our ass, because we're forced to stop. And then even in those moments, like you're having a conversation with the doctor, and it's like this voice, the higher power comes through, your great grandmother, these powerful moments, because because things have been forced to kind of come to a halt for a moment, and then you see that miracle of life come through. So I think you're finding that balance now of being so driven and so inspired and creating the life you want, but also I think that you're really paying attention to allowing all the voices in yourself to come through and really respecting them all, and like learning to love different sides of yourself, and being honest about how it's difficult to have that quiet time on the weekend, and being honest about how you've compartmentalized feelings from the past. That's like all you need to do. It's not like you don't need to like sit in a room and grieve for 2 months. Like I think just accepting and being aware of that is like the most powerful thing you can do.
Yeah. And I hate like, people think, oh, she lives in Paris and she's the voice of Lancôme and hotels.com and she writes for Prada and she's this and she, and people have an image of me that is really not at all who I am. And the other day I posted a story when I was really sad in my bed. I don't know if you saw it. And I wanted to be honest. And I was like almost in tears. And I was like, I need to do this. I need to show that, I'm a human being. And it was that triggering all these messages that I was getting of you're such a hero. And I'm like, I'm lying in my bed here, effing crying my eyes out. I'm not a hero. I didn't do anything heroic. I just, as you said, I handled the situation. That's all I did. And I didn't have a choice.
No, I think you did more. I said, I think that you did more. I think that's why I think people are calling.
More. I didn't do more. I did it in a good outfit. That's all I did.
No, but and then the way you've documented it, and it's like the style and the grace and these beautiful, like there's something about the photos and the videos that you posted. It's not just you capturing what's happened. There's like a real power and grace in those photos. Like it shines through. It's something that's kind of beyond words. And I think that attitude with which you approach it is what is heroic. And I know that people do that in general. They say like, oh, it's heroic, you went through that. And maybe in some cases, I'm sure a lot of people relate to your sentiment, but I do think there's something about how you've carried these really challenging circumstances that is very particular to you and your path. And maybe you're not seeing it now because you're just so exhausted from having to have carry that attitude and that perspective that you're bringing to it and that lens. But I think it is something special. I do.
Thank you very much. And I think that for me, whatever this, I think it's just authenticity, because I really could care less. I used to have such a curated Instagram account like a few years ago. Should I post this? What is this person going to think about it? Should I, I used to ask myself those questions, and now I don't care what anybody thinks of me. If you don't like me, I don't care. I love the quote. What is it? Darling, you can't be everybody's cup of tea because, darling, you're champagne. And I just love that. And it's like love me or hate me, I really don't care. I'm just me. I'm not for everyone. And I don't censor. I write what I want to write. And I used to censor it. And I think that that's been what has created this magnetism and this real community that I somehow have attracted when I started just being unfiltered Erica Sand, without thinking, how is this going to be perceived, and without having any intention of the reaction that people are going to have. I do it because I have a literal need to express myself. Mm-hmm. I guess I'm an artiste.
Clearly.
No, like I just say what I want. I do what I want. I don't care anymore what people think of me. And I used to be somebody that's known me for 20 years, I used to care very much what people thought about me. And now I truly do not at all. So I think that that's also something that everybody should consider, is just be yourself. And whoever likes you, those are your people. Find your people. And if people make you feel uncomfortable, and if people drain your energy, eject them immediately from your life. That's something also that I've learned from this experience. People who care about you will show up for you, and curating your entourage is a superpower and the most important thing that you do. I don't let anybody near me who makes me feel self-conscious or small, anybody. And I've realized that it wasn't me. It was the people around me that were the problem. So if I could give anybody any advice of what I've learned through going all of this, it's that if anybody makes you feel like less than your best self, and if anybody's eyes don't light up when you walk into a room, don't hang out with those people. Those are not your people. And I'm very lucky to have amassed this group of friends that literally when they see me, that's how I feel when I see you. That's how I feel when I see my friends. And everybody deserves to be surrounded by people who are excited to see you. And that's, I think, something that people don't get. I don't know why. You know, people are like friends with people that they don't like. And I'm just like, well, why are you friends with them then? Just like a jet, a goodbye, see you never. It's very easy. And I think that's the keys to happiness. And that's something that I've learned throughout all of this. And, you know, when you look death in the face, you get all these perspectives. And it's like, that's something that is important for me to share. I think it's a bit unrelated to the topic, and I've gone off on a tangent a little bit, but I think that it's important to only surround yourself with people that make you feel like the best version and the strongest version of yourself, as you do to me.
I'm happy to hear that. I don't think it's
I hope.
unrelated. I think it's really important to healing. Like, you've always made me feel that. I always feel like a star in your presence. And I feel very valued and very seen.
I've ever seen in my life.
Thank you. I'll take it.
Driven and the ballsiest, and you have the coolest family ever. I'm your number one fan, and I always will.
But I do want to add, as my I have like my Wi-Fi is getting choppy, my computer's about to die. I have to go to the school soon.
Go do your thing.
But I do want to just add to what you're saying about people, that my experience is that, yes, eject them if they're not making you feel your best in the moment, but always reserve the right to change your mind at another time. Like, there's a lot of people that have not felt right to me, and sometimes they come back to you at a different phase of life, and they have a different perspective, and they've gone through some kind of transformation, and it's always a pleasant surprise to feel like you can connect with those people differently at a different moment without having settled or compromised yourself at an earlier time. But it's just like, sometimes people can go through their own life altering experiences, and it changes them, and they come back to it from a different version, and that can be a beautiful surprise. But we shouldn't wait for that. We shouldn't expect it.
No, let them come crawling back to us.
Well, thank you so much, Erica. It's so nice to chat with you.
This was as in love for you as it was for me. I always love speaking to you, and you made me feel a lot better about the fact that I've been feeling blue these last few days. I was feeling like quite hopeless about it. So I want to thank you for like explaining and breaking it down to me. And I really appreciate that a lot.
Thank you
for your time and just for doing this, because I know you're a very busy woman. So thank you.
I love you. I love you. Chose to share your story with me, so I really do appreciate that.
My pleasure.
Mwah.
Mwah. I'll see you soon.
See you soon.
Okay, darling.
Bye.
Bisous.